Thank you, Neha, for the exciting quiz. Now, the next session is about an IAS officer who started from a very humble rural background and gone on to become a distinguished civil servant. He's a role model of one and many. I'm honored to invite Shri Bhuvnesh Kumar sir on stage. Sir, you are on mute. Please unmute your mic.
Thank you, Himanshu. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. So I would like to start with the introduction of Bhuvnesh, sir. So Shri Bhuvnesh Kumar is an IAS officer of the 1995 batch, and he is an alumnus of NIT Kurukshetra. He is currently working as Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Electronics and IT, Government of India. From a humble background of growing up in a true rural settings of Haryana, India, he became one of the most respected IAS officer in the cadre. He had successfully handled district magistrate and divisional commissioner portfolio in various challenging districts of Uttar Pradesh. He has also been the secretary of the UP IAS Association. Welcome, sir, to the session, and looking forward to learn many things from your experiences.
Thank you. Thank you once again.
Okay, sir, let me just... So, sir, I'll just start with the question that it is often said that it is important to know the why before you start your UPSC preparation, as it plays an important role in keeping you motivated throughout the long journey. So, what was that why for you? What was the trigger for you to join the civil services and become an IAS?
See, honestly, if you ask me, I really did not have actually a why right from the beginning. So things changed midway. Actually, I did my graduation, as you told, in electronics and communication engineering. And after that, I started working with a public sector undertaking of Government of India, CMC Limited. In those days, it was a government company. And I wasn't really very keen to join the civil services, and I did not even think of that. But what happened is my friends from the college, some of them were preparing for the civil services, and they used to come to Delhi for the exams. And during that time, we used to have a lot of interaction. And they used to tell me, Bhuvnesh, why don't you also prepare for the civil services? And as a young boy, I told them, no, I have done engineering in electronics and communication, and now I'm working in the field of computers. And in '89, if you can understand, computers was totally upcoming in India, and it was something totally new and challenging in the society. So I thought I am doing my dream job, and I am really not looking towards something of that sort. So I wish them good luck. I said, you people can prepare and please go on. I am not really very keen. But at the same time, to be honest, somewhere at the back of mind, the fear was also there that, and perhaps kind of inferiority complex was also there, that students from my college and people like my background, they are not the ones meant for civil services, or who succeed and get through to the examinations like that, those tough exams. And there was no past history also. So I mean, the basic thing was that there was no surety that one would reach that level, which happens. And I'm sure many of those who are listening to me here today on this platform, they may also have similar doubts, the kind of doubts I had. But interestingly, in 1992, three of my college mates, two were my batchmates, and one was my senior. All three of them got through, not only got through to the exam, civil service exam, but they got the IAS allotted. And that was something which changed things for me completely. And for me, it was like people like me actually can do it. And that gave me the confidence. That was the watershed. I mean, that was the game changing thing. Giving me confidence that people from my background, my college, my institution, whom I have seen in physical terms, in flesh and blood, and those are the ones who have been able to succeed. So I can also. And that is how the journey started. And from there on, then things moved.
So continuing with that, as I've been mentoring a lot of UPSC aspirant over past 10, 12 years, I've seen a lot of rural background students, Hindi medium background student per se, who actually don't aspire for being a civil servant just because they feel that it is kind of not doable for them. It's kind of it's not their cup of tea. So what you wanted to say, because you came from the same background, you have faced a lot of hardship into life at the starting early phase of your life. So what you wanted to say to make sure that they motivated and they feel a kind of sense that they can do it.
Yeah, this is the story I told, how I started for the civil services, and what were my fears, and what was the kind of inferiority complex the people face who come from maybe a lower middle class or middle class, and sometimes from a poor background also, and they do not have a family support, or there are not many people to guide them, and they do not know, I mean, whom to go to for anything they want to know and understand. And that is the time when half of them actually drop out, and they think that, okay, this is not my cup of tea, I am not going to go and perhaps take this challenge. But I want to assure you, I mean, if you keep the confidence, and also if you take this as a challenge, and honestly, sincerely prepare, concentrate on the work, you can definitely do it. There is no doubt about it. And not only me, I mean, I did it some 25, 26 years back. In the past few years, I mean, every year, if you look at the results, so many of the candidates who are coming from much more lower and humble background, they are able to succeed, and they have done really well. And that should be a big motivation for many of you here.
Thank you, sir. Coming those words from you, it's kind. I truly believe that it motivates, many of the aspirant who is listening to us. They're in thousands right now. So, sir, my next question is that, most of the aspirants we meet, they often say that they wanted to become an IAS officer to bring a change in the way our society functions. So, actually, in the real life, once you become an IAS officer, how challenging or how practical it is to actually bring about that change?
See, I think most of the people who join the civil services, first of the agenda at their mind is basically to join the services and do something to change from within, and do something for the society. And some of them actually come with very, very high ideals, and they think that they will be able to change everything. And once they are inside, as long as they are on the other side of the table, they think that if I were there, I would go and change everything. But let me be honest, the country is too big. The number of problems and areas, it is too big a canvas. But at the same time, whatever you do, you can definitely make certain changes which can be everlasting and which can really affect the society, and that gives you a lot of satisfaction. So you can make change. I don't think that you can change everything. That perhaps is not possible for anybody to do that. But at the same time, in whatever domain you are working, and this service, IAS especially, gives you such diversified areas to work in, and whichever area you go and work in, there is always a chance that you can do something which is going to change lives of hundreds, thousands, lakhs, perhaps more.
True, sir. True, sir. So, continuing in the same, conversation, we would like to know your experience. You have joined 25 years back, roughly 25 years back, this services. So, how you started, and what are the different challenging roles that you have taken? Which one is the most rewarding for you? In terms of work, if you can just share a few thoughts, few of your experiences.
See, in last 25 years in the state of Uttar Pradesh, I have worked in different capacities. I started my career, which every IAS officer does, is from a sub-divisional magistrate. And then you go on to become the chief development officers and district magistrates, divisional commissioners, and you work in the government. as special secretaries, and my last assignment in government of UP was the principal secretary in the Department of Animal Husbandry and Fisheries. So many things which are so diversified in nature, you get across that. And especially when you are in the field as district magistrates and collectors, the whole district and all the departments, they are basically at your disposal, kind of a thing, that you are able to do a lot of things. And normally, what people feel is that the assignments of collector and district magistrates are the most satisfying. And in various places, you come across different kind of problems. So if I was working in Bundelkhand, then perhaps drinking water and poverty and employment were the issues. But when you go and work in Agra, drinking water was a big challenge there. But personally, if you ask me, what has been your most satisfying experience in the service in last 25 years? I think I would go on to say that I have handled a large number of serious law and order problems, starting from the riots in Aligarh in 2006. For the first time, that was my experience. And then from there onwards, roughly 10 such situations I have been able to handle, and the government had that faith in me. They sent me to those situations, in the middle of those situations, including the Muzaffarnagar riots and Saharanpur riots and the Bhatta Parsol in Noida. Those were the situations which were really challenging. There were people on one side. There have been occasions when there are farmers agitating on one side, and there is the administration and police on the other side. There are situations when two communities are fighting, and those situations are really very challenging. My first experience was in Aligarh in 2006, and there was a riot which happened between two communities there over some small issue, which was not that big, but it flared up. Then, in the middle of that crisis, I was asked. I was only 10, 11 years old in the service, quite young at that time. This was my first experience of that kind. So I landed up with one of my police colleagues, the superintendent of police at that time. So it was entirely a different experience. But what gave me as a satisfaction was the kind of confidence building. We reached across to people in the society at large. In general, we went from perhaps mohalla to mohalla, door to door, talking to people, trying to understand, trying to calm down their feelings, and giving them the confidence that no, administration is totally with them, and nothing of that sort is going to happen. And slowly, we were able to build that confidence, and they also started believing in us. And from there onwards, I never turned back. And then at every next step, whenever this kind of an opportunity came, slowly, that image and that confidence of the people started building in me. And at the peak in Muzaffarnagar riots in 2013, most of the people, they said, okay, now he is coming, so things will get sorted out. That kind of image when you build, so that's a big change, and it's kind of a jump start in those situations. And this is not possible overnight. I mean, you just can't go and handle a riots and people start believing you. This has to be done over the years in whatever circumstances and jobs you have worked. You worked as CDOs, you worked as DMs, you worked as special secretaries, you interacted with the public. You have been with them through thick and thin. You have listened to their problems. You have tried to solve their problems. And then only that kind of confidence comes. When people say that, okay, that man, that officer, he is coming here, so we believe in him. We have the confidence, and whatever will be done will be just. And it will not be any kind of a partial treatment to any community, society, or people in general. And it will not be a one-way traffic. It will not be always the administration and the government, but we will also be listened, and we will have fair share what we want to say. So engaging with the society, engaging with the people, especially under distress situations, and building that confidence and solving those issues and not letting things go out of hand. That has been the biggest satisfaction being in the service in last 25 years.
Great, sir. So coincidentally, in 2006, I was in Aligarh. I was a student of Aligarh Muslim University. So when you were the
Okay.
DM out there, so I have firsthand seen this how bad the situation that night were, and how actually administration have gone to the older part of the city and try to calm everything down. So those challenges are enormous, and I truly believe you learn a lot from these kind of challenges, and keep on growing in your job.
I don't know if you were in Aligarh in 2008 also, because there was arson in university itself in 2008. All the hostels were closed. Even the VC bungalow was brought down, and lot of things. That situation was very violent situation. We had to vacate the university. Around, I think, 28 to 30,000 students. We vacated overnight, and that was a big operation. Let me tell you, I mean, I have not counted that in 10. But closing down a university and sending 30,000 students overnight from city of Aligarh, I still remember that afternoon I was coming back from Khair Tappal, the area of Aligarh, when I got this message from the Vice Chancellor, and he told me this kind of incident has happened. And while on the way back, I spoke to the SSP, and then we arranged in next 2 to 3 hours. I spoke to Government of India directly in the Department of Ministry of Railways, and they committed to give me 10 trains by evening to vacate the university, and that was really amazing. It was quite unbelievable. I got back to my bosses and I told the state government, I told my commissioner that I've spoken to Ministry of Railways, and they have agreed to arrange 10 trains, and they'll be like free of cost to vacate the students from the universities. And I spoke to the state government, and from the Department of Transport, they arranged 100 buses for the students to be sent to different areas. So that one night, I still remember, that was one of the again challenging days. So,
Exactly,
but
sir.
at the same time, we were able to win the confidence of the students, and we were able to actually convince them and send them back amidst the crisis. And when the university opened after a week or so, sorry, a month or so, it took more than a month for the university to open. The students still had that faith in the administration, and that was one of the initial days of the bonding between the students and the administration, which was missing in AMU before that. So AMU students were never interacting, and the AMU itself was never interacting with the administration before that. But that particular incident that changed a lot. And for the first time, perhaps in 2008, I don't know, I mean, how many years, we were able to go to all the hostels and halls of the AMU and search from room to room.
I remember that was the first time police actually entered, into the hostels of Aligarh Muslim University.
And from that onwards, we had such wonderful relations with all the students and the university. The administration was invited to the university functions very often after that, which was missing before that. There was no connect.
Exactly.
So this connect with the masses and connect with the people and giving them the confidence that no, we are not on the opposite side. Rather, we are with you. In most of the law and order situations, we are fighting actually our own people. It's a most important thing to understand that people who are on the other side, they are our own people. They are not from a foreign country or an enemy country, and we are not fighting a pitched battle with an enemy to finish him. Rather, these are the people whom after some time they have to be on our side, and this is only temporary and small time that people are just fighting against us, and things will settle down slowly.
I believe the communication is the key factor, in such kind of a situation.
Communication is only one of the factors. The most important thing is that how people look at you. See, if you are seen to be partial, whatever kind of communication, how good language you speak, or what kind of speeches you give, that's not going to make a difference. The idea is that whether you are seen as impartial, whether you are seen as helping, whether you're seen as supporting, whether you have see, in peacetime, when actually there is no problem and there is no law and order issue going on, during those days, did you actually listen to the public when they came as individuals? They came to meet you for so many issues. They came for the bad roads, they came for the electricity, they came for the drinking water, they came for the land issues. So when they came as individuals to your office, were you available? Were you with them? Did you try to solve them? Did you see did they see you as a supporting person, as a helping person? So if that has not happened in the past, on that particular day, they are not going to be with you. They are going to stand against you. But on the other hand, if you have been helping and they perceive you as a person, as an officer who actually is working for the public and their welfare, then on the day of law and order also, they are going to help you and stand with you and not against you. So that is the biggest thing. So engaging with the society and doing public welfare during the peace times actually leads to the entire scenario change at the time of struggle and trouble and the agitations and all those things. I will not call it war, but yes, agitations.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Okay, sir. So I'm little digressing from here now. So, as an IS officer, usually you have been, or any IS officer, he has to work into different departments. It may happen sometimes he had to work in aviation, sometimes he had to work in, milk cooperative, sometimes he may have to work in pharma as well, on government central deputation. So, is there any training given to an IS officer if he's let's say going to join aviation or some pharma sector, and how do they deal with different kind of roles? How do you deal with different kind of roles?
I think very relevant and very important question actually. On one hand, if you look at the IAS, then IAS is different from most other services because there is huge diversity in the job profile. In most other services, whatever you are doing right from the beginning, you may be doing a little more than that till the end of your career, and you may be treated as a specialist of that job. But IAS is more a generalist job, and actually in very short durations at times there are chances that you end up being in entirely different sector. One day you are dealing with agriculture, the other day you are dealing with the industry, and then perhaps you are in health or social sectors or education. And for example, I was dealing with the animal husbandry, dairy and fisheries only a month back in the state. And now I'm in the government of India and dealing with electronics and information technology. So
Two poles apart, sir.
yes. So this is actually a strength in the sense that you are not doing repeated kind of things, and you get the opportunity to work in various sectors. But at the same time, it becomes challenging also. So what helps an IS officer is his initial training. The training which he does, especially in the district, the initial 2 years of training that happens, of which 1 year is in the field. So when you are working there, you actually get to deal with all the subjects, and you learn about all the subjects, and then your field experience as CDO and as DM, where you are dealing with almost all kinds of departments of the state government and also of the central government. It is not that you are only dealing with the state subjects, but departments like post, telecommunication, railways, and defense establishments. These are the organizations which one has to interact with, deal with them during the collector days. Whenever you are in charge of a district, all these things are part of your domain. So those subjects, obviously, you learn and you understand the basic nuances of these departments from there while working in the field for long duration. And then when you come to the secretariat and you are in the policy planning, then in the policy planning, you have to actually spend initial days learning about the processes, about the existing policies, about how things function. Recently, I moved to Government of India, and there is some difference in the working of the state governments and the central government. And moving from animal husbandry to information technology, So now this is the phase of last 1 month I have been doing, and I think it will be another 1 or 2 months wherein I am totally learning. I am going back to all kinds of stakeholders, including my colleagues in the ministry and people who are in the field for whom we are working. For example, my job is basically to work with the IT industry for IT and IT enabled services and software industry promotion. So I'm trying to go back to everybody. I'm going to NASCOM. I'm going to iSquirt. I speak to people from the industry. I speak to people who are in the related ministries. My colleagues here, the autonomous bodies and societies under the ministry, the NIC and the STPI and all those organizations, and also to the state IT secretaries, so that this period is going to let me reach a level from where I will start contributing. At this stage, I am learning, and this happens in most of the organizations. Whenever you switch from one field to another field, the initial days you have to actually devote a lot of time and energy to learn, and then only you will be successful. If you just be superficial and you move from one department to another department, then your contribution in that organization or the department or the job profile is going to be very, very limited. So you want to do service to the people, you want to do service to the community and the nation altogether. Then one has to be prepared for that, and that is why you must accept this challenge. That if I am given different jobs, I will be able to deal with that and deliver successfully.
I said one more thing, related to challenges only, and continuing this conversation. So we are currently facing a pandemic, of which is kind of unprecedented, and it's kind of very big on scale everywhere. And now in these kind of situation, common man usually look up to the bureaucracy, look up to the bureaucrats to give the directions, to give to make sure that everything goes on track and everything comes back to normal. So with your experiences of last roughly 1 year that we have faced this particular situation, being an IS officer, how do you see these challenges, and what are your experiences in learning about COVID situation? How it changes maybe the way of working for an IS officer, or you as a person?
See, as I told you, my past experience of dealing with crisis situations, especially in the law and order situations, that has really helped me in dealing with these kind of situations also. And many in the administrative services get this kind of opportunity. I'm not the only one. All those people who come to this service and who work in the field, in one form or the another form, they will get this kind of an opportunity where they have to handle situations which are quite unforeseen. And in fact, I don't know if you would be aware, even in the annual performance appraisal report of the officers, which is written, one of the columns of that appraisal report is whether the officer was able to handle the unforeseen circumstances. Was he able to anticipate things and take prior actions on those things? So, because as I told you, the district functioning revolves not only about few things. It encompasses the activities which are of the life domain, right from perhaps birth to death, and whatever activities happen in one man's life, anything related to that will be the domain of the district magistrate, and he has to deal with that. It could be unfortunate situations like a train accident, so you have to deal with that. So there may be earthquakes, there may be drought situations, and they happen once in a while, and everybody gets that opportunity. So this pandemic was actually far bigger than the scales at which we have dealt with situations earlier. So the magnitude of this pandemic has been far, far bigger. And a lot many things were not even understood. People didn't even know what this virus is, what this disease is, what are the solutions to this problem. how it should be tackled. And there happened a lot of experimentation, and a lot of experimentation happened all across the country. So there were certain things which were successful, and people could replicate those models in other areas. There were unforeseen circumstances which had to be dealt in that particular manner. For example, the oxygen shortage happened, and how the whole system reacted to that. And then we were able to set up so many new plants. We have been able to set up, and oxygen came from all across the country and was delivered. The challenge was met. So that is, in a way, a very highly satisfying thing which you can do while you are in this service, and that is one of the biggest motivating factors to be in this service. Apart from whatever you do in normal circumstances, you are in a situation to get those opportunities by being in this service, where you get to handle such kind of situations, and you are able to deliver. And I'm sure you heard so many names who have done wonderfully well even during this pandemic situation, and they have come up with innovative solutions, and they have been able to do wonderfully well. And many of the IS officers have seen, and in fact, uh, uh, it is during the crisis, and it is during those challenging situations, even like elections and all those things, when actually the society thinks that yes, IS officers do contribute. And on other normal situations, perhaps many times they do not believe in the structure of the steel frame that much. But when it comes to crisis, I have seen it in last 25 years that this body has been able to deliver. Officers have been able to deliver, and that gives the biggest satisfaction of being in this service, a member of this elite service.
What actually happens, sir, from the common man side, they always look forward to that glitz and that glamour associated with the job. They don't look at the kind of hard work and toil that a bureaucrat and the pressure situation that they have to face day in day out to make sure that country is running smoothly.
No, sorry, I would differ here. See, glamour is
Yes.
for routine, but credibility and when you are recognized, that happens only during crisis. And people understand the value, and people understand the officers, people understand the service altogether when there is a crisis, and that is dealt successfully, and people are able to get those results to their satisfaction. And that is when they say that yes, it has been delivered by the administration, it has been delivered by the government, or it has been delivered by whosoever. But you get the credit only when you are able to deliver in challenging circumstances. In normal circumstances, perhaps many won't even know and won't even say. And that is a period what you are talking about, is that people look at these services from the glamour point of view. Of course, there is some glamour and some status associated with this service, no doubt about that. Because when you are working in the field as a district magistrate, you are the representative of the government, and you are dealing with everything. So people look up to you, and they believe that if there is anything difficult which is going to come up, let me go to the collector and district magistrate. He will solve my problem. If nobody else is able to solve, then there is one man, there is one institution where they have faith, and they think that yes, if I go there, my problem will get solved, and I will get fair results, and they will not be partial and biased results. So that faith in the institution itself is very important, and that is basically the satisfaction. I perhaps think more 75, 80, 90% people who come to the service, they come for that satisfaction. They think that yes, if I am in that chair, then I will be able to deliver to the people, I will be able to help the people, I will be able to change their lives, I will be able to improve their life conditions. So that is the biggest motivation for people to enter the administrative services.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, there's one audience question. A student is asking that you have a long experience being an IS officer. What do you think, as an aspirant, some qualities that we should inculcate to become a successful IS officer afterwards?
In my opinion, a few things which are very important. First of all, you should be a good human being. It's very important to empathize. It's very important to understand the difficulties of others. And especially sometimes when you come from a humble background, perhaps you understand those difficulties. But at times, people who come from a background where they have not seen those difficulties, how a person is commuting by a bus, how a person commutes if he does not have a vehicle. So how does he travel? How people have studied in the village schools where there are limited amenities, and in spite of that, they have been able to do something good. But somebody who studied in a big, highly paid, fees paid public school, and who has traveled by the family car most of the times, perhaps won't understand what are the difficulties of traveling in a public transport. So that is why it is important that when you are reaching this service, you get a first-hand experience of other things also. So that will make you understand. Not only that, even in office, most of the times, what we think we have ordered, we ask somebody to go and do that job, and then he is not back in a short while, and we get angry. We say that, oh, you're not come, you're slow, you're lethargic, you're not working. But the fact is that please try to do that job yourself and try to find out how much time it takes. And once you do it, then you will understand that no, it is not that way. So you are able to empathize. So if somebody has been given the job to type a paper, then you should also type one page and see how much time it takes, and then take the printout and set the printer. For example, I was participating in this interview today. So I was trying to set up this on the other computer. My headphone was not getting attached. I spent 10, 15, 20 minutes. Then I switched over to this tab. But if I had asked somebody else to do this and he was not able to do it, then I would say, oh, you're useless. You're not able to do it. But since I was not able to do it, I can understand somebody who does it for me, then he is very important to me because he is doing something which I was not able to. So that part is very, very important to understand, that everybody who is working around you, he is doing his or her job, and how they are delivering it, that is equally important. And when you become successful, it is their contribution also in your success.
True, sir. True. So, sir, it's been it's been a very way back when you have given your UPSC examination, but the soul and the difficultiness of that examination remains the same throughout these years. So, I would like to ask a few bits related to your preparation days, if you allow. Uh, so basically, we would like to know, so you have started your preparation after graduation, then after job. What do you feel that is the right way, according to you, now when you look back at it? Should someone start at the very starting in the schooling or college level, or should someone wait till he graduates and then probably join something and then probably look forward to it?
Very difficult to prescribe panacea for this. I mean, there are no uniform solutions. So certain things
Yes,
which
sir.
work for certain people don't work for others. For me, it was entirely a different thing. My example is not really a very suitable pattern to follow. As I told you, some of my college batchmates, they got selected, and that motivated me. In fact, I should thank them. They are the persons because of whom I'm in this job. But my decisions were quite abrupt, actually. So the day I got selected, I resigned from my job at that very day. I went back home. So I decided, no, I'm going to go to the civil services now. And for next 6 months, I was not doing anything. I was sitting at home and just asking others, what is the syllabus? Because my touch with the books was totally gone. I was working in the field for 3 years. I didn't know what to do. I had nobody else to guide. So I went back and met them, asked them, what is the syllabus? What are the optional subjects? What can I do? And having left the college, had worked for 3 years, got married in between, had a son, and without any choice of subjects, so I finally fell back on electrical engineering and mathematics. So my subject, my engineering was in electronics and communication, but I took electrical engineering and mathematics as my optional subjects. And fortunately, I was able to get through. I only had two chances. I started preparing at a late stage, so I got only two chances. In the first instance, I got audit and account services. and the next one I got into the administrative services. But certain things which I really want to emphasize for the candidates who are all here watching me and listening me. Many, I think, I have spoken to young colleagues over the years, and many aspirants also I have spoken to. They treat general studies at par with one of the subjects. And in my opinion, general studies is not one of the subjects. So that is something which you have to do lifelong. I don't think saying that one should start it from the 11th, or one should start from the 9th, or one should start it from the engineering days, or one should start from the graduation days. It is a lifelong learning. So whenever, whatever time you decide that I have, or your parents decide that you have an inclination for career in services, you should be dealing with the subject of general studies throughout. This is not a subject which can be prepared overnight. It's too vast.
Yes.
It's too vast. So look around, observe, see things, go ahead, and then coming to the optional subjects. As far as the optional subjects is concerned, that will depend on your personal approach, what you feel confident at. For example, if I had asked anybody, I did not ask anybody and chose those subjects. If I had asked people, then nobody would have suggested me that you should take electrical engineering and mathematics together. They would have dissuaded me, and I would not have. Then perhaps I would have taken something else, and perhaps not even succeeded. So it was purely my choice. I went by my choice and did well and got through. So subjects, optional subjects is purely your choice. But general studies one has to do right from the beginning, whenever. It is not necessarily that it is class 9th. Or, as a young boy, as a young girl, you have whatever class, wherever you are studying, and as early as possible, if you are involved in this subject, you will always be better. You will be doing far, far better.
Okay, sir. So just continuing with that, there is one question that comes in every aspirant's mind, that why is the examination designed in such a way? There are you're required to be knowledgeable about so many subjects, optional subjects. So your thoughts on it? What exactly they wanted to check, and how it helps finally once you become a civil servant or an IAS officer?
I don't think I am the right person to comment on the pattern of examination, but what I believe is they give you huge choice. I mean, they are not asking you to appear for every subject. In general studies, there can be anything, but after that, they are giving you. I think now it is one optional. Earlier, there used to be two optionals.
Yes.
One optional. So
Yes.
one option. In any case, you have to tell. I mean, that this is my subject. Even when you go for an interview and somebody says that what was your subject, and interview board asks you certain question about your subject, that should be your strength. So they are allowing you to choose your strength and say that, okay, yes, I command in this area, and I would like to come and show you my strengths from this area. And general study is something which they are trying to test your knowledge across the board, and trying to see that how have you seen life and the society and the community and the world. How have you been observant on that side? So that is the general study subject, but optional is your own strength. You have to depict that.
Sir, did you have any mentor to help with at your time of preparation, or it was self-preparation completely?
We three prepared together. Two of my more colleagues we were preparing together. I really did not have any mentor. I did not join any coaching classes. But I'm not saying that others should also not join the coaching classes. But I think preparing together is a big success.
Okay.
When that really helped. I think especially from the point of view of general studies and essays, your subject you have to of course prepare your own self. But if somebody is also preparing the same subject, then you can share certain things. To just give you an example, when we were preparing, what we used to do is on particular subjects, three of us used to divide. Okay, I will learn about Afghanistan, my colleague will learn about Iran, and one of them, third person will be learning about Croatia. and in the evening we'll sit together, and then each one of us will tell the other two. So what I have understood about Afghanistan, what are their issues, who are the people. So if I have to read something, I'm likely to forget a lot of things. But if I have to read the thing, remember that, and I have to tell somebody else as a story, unless I have understood the subject, I will not be able to. So that is why teaching is far more difficult. So your own concept should be clear. You must know the subject in depth. Then only you can teach. Otherwise, you can't. You can learn. You can read the book, but when you have to explain it to others, it should be totally clear in your mind. So that was the method which. Whatever subject I was preparing, so I was sure about that. The other two who were preparing about that subject, they were totally sure about that, because then they are going to tell others. Two other people asking questions. Okay, Acha, tell me what happened in that. So what is this? What is that? And he has to answer those questions also. And then by listening, the memorization becomes far easier than just by reading. So if you tell me a story, I tell you a story, then the chances of remembering that thing is far more than just having read it. So I think that was one thing which really helped us, and we were able to share the load. Otherwise, there are so many things which we would have missed and perhaps not been able to read and learn.
So last but not the least, I would really like you to share some word of encouragement for our young aspirants. So there are, close to 2,000 aspirants right now attending. So, your word of encouragement for them for the UPSC Civil Service examination.
See, I have already said in the beginning also and in the middle also that please have confidence in yourself. Concentrate on whatever you're doing. What happens, I have seen many people when they have to study, they are thinking about a movie, or they are thinking about sports. When they have to play, they are worried about their studies. So this is not going to help unless you are focused at whatever point you are doing. Give you 100%. If you are sitting and studying and your mind is thinking of something else, then whatever you are reading, I'm sure you're not going to remember after some time. You're going to forget about that. So focus, concentrate, have confidence, and don't have any kind of an inferiority complex. Don't think that I can't do it. And that is what I also felt, but later on I realized, no, I can do it, and I did it. So have confidence in yourself, work together if possible. If you are 2, 3, 4 people who are around and preparing together, help each other. When you are preparing and explaining to others, you are helping yourself also. It is not that you are not helping, because that one reading will make sure that you have learned the subject completely. On the other hand, if you keep reading yourself, by even reading 2, 3, 4 times, you may perhaps not be clear about the subject. So take help. Don't hesitate in asking anything from anybody. The people are there. Career Launcher is there. I really want to congratulate Himanshu and his team for organizing this kind of a session. So where you are able to listen to the direct experiences. So the thing is that you can crack it. Don't have this doubt. I'm sure, but at the same time, you need to devote. You need to work. You need to work hard and spend laborious hours. So I would wish you all the best. All those who are here on this platform, I'm sure you have a lot of aspirations. Many of you have already worked hard. You have prepared, and from my side, best wishes. Good luck to all of you, and thank you, Career Launcher, for organizing this kind of a session. I'm sure there will be many more such sessions being organized, and they will help you. Thank you very much, and good luck. Good luck.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for being very detailed in your answers. You have experiences and detailing of that. That was really wonderful. I had a wonderful time, and on behalf of Career Launcher and all the UPSC aspirants, I really wanted to say thank you from the bottom of our heart. Thank you, sir, and we look forward to host you someday again in future. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.